Something that I really hope I haven't given an impression of with the earlier Kirby Month videos is that I don't like falling block puzzle games, given how low Avalanche and Star Stacker are. I'm actually a very big fan of these. I'm also a big fan of you subscribing to my channel and helping me get to my year-end goal of 600. Thank you, I love you all. I'm not very good at them per se, but a lot of them I find tons of enjoyment in. Dr. Mario, Panel de Pon, Tetris, of course there's Puyo, which I have multiple videos on the channel for. But if I had to pick a favorite, despite how long it's been since I talked about the Game Boy original, I'd have to pick Kirby Superstar Stacker. Or Kida Kida Kids, it never came out in the US, whatever. What makes this game stand out apart from other falling block puzzle games, you ask? As mentioned in the Star Stacker video, this game is simple. You match two animal friends together and then they vanish. It's very easy to understand. What gives it depth, of course, is the chaining system. It isn't just popping animal friends, there are star blocks on the field as well, and if you have those in between the two animal friends that you pop, then they'll disappear. When you chain, star blocks that disappear fall from the top, meaning you can extend chains this way. What makes this game very difficult to chain for is that, after every few drops, the bottom row will be bumped up by one, and a randomly generated series of friends and star blocks will appear. It's very much doable to incorporate these into chains and such, it's just very difficult if you aren't used to it. What doesn't help are the bomb blocks that are mixed in, which will blow up the entire row of blocks and animal friends if they're popped. I wouldn't describe this game as hard to understand. It's very easy to get a good grasp on it, actually, but I do know people that are generally good at falling block puzzle games, and they have a hard time bringing their fundamentals over from the others of its kind. And a big part of that, I feel, is that you start your chains by only popping two animal friends. 2 is a very small number. In Tetris, you clear out an entire row. In Puyo, you pop 4 of the same colored blobs. Even Panel de Pon, which you just connect 3's still a world of difference compared to 2. As weird as it sounds saying as a Kirby game, I think playing this game multiplayer can be kinda tough. That's what I love so much about it though. It's really easy to understand what you have to do, but between the bottom row moving up, chains starting with such a low numerical requirement, and of course oncoming damage from the other player, it gives off a pretty unique feeling, and it's one that I really like. Compared to other falling block puzzlers, I feel like this is the one where you have to be the most adaptive. I don't know if that's a word, but with all the factors at hand here, you're constantly changing how you're looking at your board. Even your chain, while setting it up, you can decide to opt for something completely different, and if you're good enough, you can make it work. Other puzzle games have this too, but here the chains are just so easy to start, and there's constant adaptation being required because of the bottom row. It keeps the mind sharp. It's good, very fun. I like it. Something I hear a lot of people who only play single player, and I was guilty of this at one point too, is that you can stick to really small chains and still win. What matters most is clearing out your field. Honestly, for a lot of games like this, that works in the single player. But for the 2-player modes in this game, that's just not true. There's a mode where you have to clear out a certain amount of stars before moving on, of course, and you can just pull off small chains and win there. It's doable. But you all know where I'm going with this. It times you. If you want to speedrun and get a good in-game time, you gotta get big chains. Go fast, be crazy. I love time attack in games like this, but I especially love it in this game, not only because of reasons already stated, but because the flow of the game is just so good. The pacing is perfect, far and away the best game speed in any of its kind. This is where my big issue lies with the Game Boy version. It feels choppy to me, not to mention the board is a lot smaller. Here, it feels amazing. The board is huge, and you're just allowed to go nuts. There's also the story mode, which functions the same as the multiplayer does, just against the computer instead of a friend. I can't even say you can just stick to small chains here against the early game opponents. Specifically talking on the story mode, it's very charming. I'll go into the actual visuals later, but these drawings used for the cutscenes, they're fantastic. 1 second they're adorable, and the next, Knuckle Joe is going to the hospital. You set fire to Chef Kawasaki, and everyone's laughing about it. This once cute, lively flower is dead. At this point, we should all be used to this, considering it's Kirby and all, but it will forever be funny to me. It's so cute, but it's also just so vicious. This is also one of the few Kirby spin-offs to have a secret final boss. The main series games love doing this, but in the spin-offs it's very rare, so it's always fun to see. It's also really difficult. This is one of those fights where, once you lose, you can't try it again without clearing the story mode again, while meeting the requirements to make it to her in the first place. I don't think you get anything for beating her other than a harder difficulty mode, but the intrinsic reward is enough. Across all the game modes, regardless of which you pick, the improvements over Game Boy Star Stacker seriously cannot be overstated. I briefly mentioned the bigger board and smoother controls, but they really deserve more focus. The control especially is so much better here, something that's very hard to explain, of course. You'll never fully understand a game's control until you've played it yourself, but Game Boy Star Stacker just always felt stiff. Like the game had to take a second every time you wanted to flip your blocks, unless the game was going ridiculously fast. Here, all around, start to end, it just feels smooth. A bigger board is much easier to explain the perks of. More space, larger chains. Simple. I should note that, for the multiplayer, the most amount of damage your chains can deal depends on the difficulty level that you're playing on. It's really weird, but I think I like it. It just helps newer players learn how to make smaller chains, and then they can gradually work their way up without getting destroyed by the larger ones. I enjoy playing on the highest difficulty myself, so I don't get too impacted by it, but it's worth mentioning. Also worth mentioning is how beautiful this game looks. I can't say too much because, of course, this game borrows its art style from Kirby's Dream Land 3, and we haven't talked about that game yet. But what this game has that Dream Land 3 doesn't are the story mode cutscenes. And to me, that's enough to make it stand out. Either way, the sprites, the backgrounds, the general style look fantastic. I'm also a big fan of the music in this game, all around. I love the Game Boy music too, but in my book, comparing 8-bit and 16-bit music, it's like comparing Game Boy Star Stacker to Super Star Stacker? Okay, fine, it's not a good comparison, but I'm just a much bigger fan of SNES music than I am NES or Game Boy. It sounds a lot more pleasant to me, especially the happier, more jovial tracks. Stuff like the music playing when you're just getting started sounds great on the Game Boy, but with better sounding SNES sound font, it just makes me happy. Superstar Stacker even goes the extra mile and has some more intense sounding tracks too. Most famously, and the one time this game has ever gotten any kind of spotlight, the music for the Day-to-Day fight in story mode is what inspired Masked Day-to-Day's theme in Superstar Ultra. No, really, it's a remix. Both of them are great, but still a remix. I haven't been talking about sound effects much during Kirby Month, but I want to bring them up this game because they're excellent. Things like the jingle that plays when you get a chain increasing in pitch for every successive part of the chain, so cool. The Game Boy version did this too, but the little applause you get at the end just wasn't there in the Game Boy version. My personal favorite sound is when you get a chain in multiplayer and whack your opponent with whatever weapon you've got. Okay, seriously though, can we just talk about how vicious this game is? Everyone is so violent here. The story mode is, of course, the biggest offender, but especially compared to other falling block puzzlers at the time, any damage to the opponent in those games was implied at best. You'd see the damage on the board, something like that. Worst case was when the opponent lost, their character would look upset. Maybe the garbage Puyo falling on your opponent was the worst things got, but here, just getting a chain. Look at what Kirby does. Yes, he is literally beating the life out of this flower. And you know what? I can't stop laughing at this. Why is this so funny? I have very specific things that I look for in a game to get me hooked. I like smooth controls, I like satisfying gameplay, and in some cases, I like a good combination of the unpredictable, combined, not separate, with the ability to win with proper planning and strategy. The unpredictability keeps things fun, but no matter what, you should be able to plan ahead and win. Standard Kirby games focus more on knowing what obstacles are ahead and using creativity to plan out how you want to get past those obstacles. And if you set your game up like that, I prefer it to any kind of unpredictability. But if your game is going to have random elements, like a falling block puzzle game, I hate losing the chance. I never feel like I get robbed in this game, and I think that's the easiest way to describe why I just love it as much as I do. Sure, the Dreamland 3 visuals help, the stellar music helps, the fun story mode where your main goal has nothing to do with assaulting Dreamland citizens but you do it anyway, helps. But the game being so smooth and rewarding adaptability and proper planning is the big thing for me. And don't get me wrong, most other good falling block puzzle games do this too. It's not Superstar Stacker exclusive. I just think this game takes my favorite elements of the genre and incorporates them in the best way. It's not perfect. Again, I still don't know if I like difficulty determining the chain ceiling, something pivotal to literally any multiplayer game like this, but it's just so much fun that I can't find myself being bothered by it at all. But that's enough of that. Now we are getting into the truly elite, the top 10. We've already covered some of my favorite games ever made. Everything from Epic Yarn and above is easily in my top 50 favorite games of all time. A list I should make for the channel one of these days, but not right now. But if I had to narrow down my 10 favorite Kirby games, these are, in my opinion, the best of the best. What are we starting off with? Find out tomorrow.